Do you find that some of your worries are really complex? That there just seems to be a lot going on and that it's difficult to manage the worry because there's so many parts and components to it? We call these complex worries, and I'll be talking about how you deal with them in this video. Hi everyone. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to deal with complex worries. Worries that don't really seem to fit that type 1 or type 2 category that I've talked about in previous videos. But before I get into that, just a couple of disclaimers to go over. I am a registered psychologist in the province of British Columbia, Canada, and this video is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as a replacement or substitute for advice from your doctor or mental health professional. So with those two things out of the way, let's start talking about complex worries. Now, in the last video, I talked about recipes for how you manage type 1 and type 2 worries and putting together all of the skills and the tools that we've talked about in the videos leading up to it. But for some people, they find that some of their worries don't really fit nicely into this type 1, type 2 categorization. That there seems to be a bit of type 1 component to the worry, but also a type 2 component to the worry. So the worry is kind of more complex. There's kind of this mix of type 1 and type 2 worries. So the question becomes, how exactly do I deal with this? How do I deal with these complex worries? And so what I wanted to talk about is kind of a formula or recipe for these complex worries that actually follows quite nicely from the previous video. So if you think about the very first step in worry management, we identify it as recognizing what it is that you're worrying about and labeling the worry. Is it type 1 or is it type 2? Well, in this situation, what you're doing is you're recognizing and you're identifying the worry and recognizing that it's both type 1 and type 2. It's a mixed worry. So I'll give you an example of a mixed worry. Suppose I have a business, and during the busiest time of the year, I have a whole bunch of staff members quit or get sick. And so I don't have enough staff to be able to fill all of the orders that I have. And so then I start to worry, well, this is going to really upset a lot of my customers. And what if those customers decide that they're going to go shop somewhere else? And then this will have a real negative impact on my business, and my business is going to decline and maybe shut down in the future because I'm not going to be able to recover from this setback. So it's got a bit of a type 1 component to it, that I'm dealing with a problem right now of my staff all either quitting or getting sick and not having enough staff to complete all of the orders. So that's the type 1 component of the worry. But the type 2 component of the worry is my business suffering in the future because of this, and ultimately me losing my business because all of my customers have gone somewhere else. That's the type 2 component of this worry. So we've got a little bit of a mix. Our type 1 worry has spiraled into a type 2 worry. So what do you do with this? I've identified it as a complex worry. I've identified it as a mixed worry. What do I do to manage this worry? Well, very first step, as we talked about in the previous video, is to look for ways in which I can be more tolerant of uncertainty in this situation. How do I tolerate uncertainty? Or another way of thinking about it is, what are the ways in which I'm being intolerant of uncertainty in this situation? So maybe what I'm doing is I'm avoiding notifying my customers that their shipment is going to be delayed because I'm concerned that if I notify them, they're going to cancel the order. Well, all that's really doing is maintaining my worry about what my customers are thinking. So a more tolerating uncertainty thing to do in that situation is to notify them, call them, explain to them what's going on, and see what happens. So thinking about what are the ways in which I can be more tolerant of uncertainty in this situation. Second thing you do, like with all worries, is to identify and challenge worry beliefs. To think about what are the worry beliefs that might be playing a role in me worrying about these series of events and the future series of events. Do I think that worrying about this situation, worrying about not having enough staff to fulfill these orders, is worrying about it going to help me solve that problem? Well, then I can think about the tools that I've learned to help me challenge that belief that worry aids in problem solving. So I identify and challenge the worry beliefs that might be contributing to my worry. So I've gone through those steps, and those are the same steps we use regardless of the worry, regardless of whether it's a type 1 or a type 2 worry. But now what do I do? It's still there. Maybe I'm still worrying about it, and it's this mixed worry. It's still got type 1 and it's still got type 2 components to it. Well, what I recommend for clients in this type of situation is to focus on it like it's a type 1 worry. So look at the negative problem orientation that may be contributing to the worry. So trying to reframe the problem as an opportunity. What's the opportunity in this situation for me? Well, maybe the opportunity is for me to figure out ways of becoming more streamlined in how I get my product out to my customers. Maybe I can figure out more efficient ways of fulfilling the orders with fewer staff, which will help me grow my business in the future. So there's opportunities in this, and so if I can reframe the problem rather than just seeing it as a threat, I reframe it as an opportunity, then I'm more likely to then be able to engage in some problem solving with this. So I then engage in those problem solving steps to try and address the problem of not having enough staff to fulfill these orders. So I engage in those 6 problem solving steps that I talked about in an earlier video. So now I've engaged in effective problem solving. Suppose I've solved the problem. So I've figured out ways of either hiring new temporary staff or being more efficient and being able to fulfill these orders with the staff that I have. So I've solved that problem. Well, there's a good chance that by solving the problem, I've now eliminated the type 2 worry part of this worry as well. So I've eliminated the type 1 because I've addressed the problem, but now that I've addressed the problem, maybe I'm not going to worry about losing all my customers anymore, and maybe I'm not going to worry about becoming bankrupt and losing my company. So by addressing it as a type 1 worry, I may fully solve the type 2 worry part of this and fully address the complex worry by just treating it like it's a type 1 worry. But suppose that I solved the problem, I've addressed the type 1 worry part of it, but there's still this niggling worry that I have about, yeah, that was close. What if in the future my business falls apart? And I start to keep worrying about that type 2 part of the worry. Well, if I'm still worrying about the type 2 part of the worry, then I can engage in the cognitive exposure we've talked about. So write out a script, imagining that worst case scenario, and then reviewing that script over and over and over again to essentially drain the emotion out of that worry. So these complex worries, even though they seem more complex, they're actually pretty straightforward in terms of the steps you need to use and the order you need to use them. And they're very similar to how we deal with, be it a type 1 worry or be it a type 2 worry. So you essentially treat it like it's a type 1 worry. You identify the worry, tolerate uncertainty, challenge worry beliefs, address the negative problem orientation, and engage in problem solving. At that point, if there's any type 2 part of the worry left over, then you engage in the cognitive exposure. So, what I like about this is that it flows nicely with what we talked about in the previous video about our recipe for managing worries, and that complex worries are actually not all that complex in terms of what you need to do to address the worry. So I hope you found this video helpful, just as a way of dealing with worries that you may not have been sure about how exactly I deal with it, because it's a bit of both type 1 and type 2 worries. So what do I do? The previous video didn't talk about what I do if I have both types of worry in a single worry. Well, it's pretty straightforward in terms of the recipe. Treat it as a type 1 worry and then add the cognitive exposure if there's any type 2 worry components left. Hope you find that helpful and useful. I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas about this, or if you have any questions about this, please leave me some comments down below. If you're finding these videos helpful and you want to see more, please hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, and you'll be alerted whenever I post a new video. So that's it for today's video. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.